Picture this, right? A perfectly legitimate bank account. It's got a verified Social Security number, a pristine credit history, regular utility bill payments. Everything looks completely normal.
Right, totally above board on paper.
Exactly. But, and here's the hook, this account is currently moving hundreds of thousands of dollars for an international human trafficking syndicate. And the scariest part, that account is actually in your name.
Yeah, that is a jarring thought for anyone to wake up to.
Welcome to today's deep dive. You all sent us some incredible sources on identity theft, specifically how it's the foundational enabler of financial crime. And our mission today is to completely reframe how you view this. We're not just talking about a stolen credit card here.
No, not at all. Because, well, we usually treat identity theft as this, localized consumer nuisance, right? Like someone grabs your card details, they buy a laptop, you dispute the charge, and boom, the problem is resolved.
Right, a temporary headache.
Exactly. But the reality detailed in the sources you provided completely shifts that paradigm. It frames that stolen credit card as essentially the raw material for global syndicates. It's the gateway drug of financial crime.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to go on a bit of a journey today, moving from, the initial theft of scattered data fragments to the incredibly clever ways criminals bypass multi-million-dollar banking security.
And eventually to the massive, shadowy criminal ecosystems that all this stolen data actually enables.
Right, because the core concept here targets the absolute foundation of the global financial system. Every transaction, every cleared wire, every approved loan, it all rests on one single assumption.
And that assumption is that the identity presented to a firm is authentic, and crucially, that it's actually controlled by the rightful person.
But I want to push back on that a little bit, because most people, and I definitely include myself in this, we tend to think of identity theft as an endpoint.
Like the crime itself is over once the data is stolen.
Yeah, exactly. They steal your info, they buy a TV, and the bad guy wins. Crime over. But sources explicitly state that this sits way upstream of much larger crimes.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, identity theft is actually just an entry point. When a bad actor compromises that identity integrity, they are literally weaponizing the bank's own infrastructure.
Oh, wow. So they're using the bank against itself.
Precisely. Identity theft just creates the platform. Once a criminal has a seemingly legitimate identity, they can launch payment fraud, synthetic identity abuse, mass money laundering operations.
So they need to hide the beneficial ownership.
Right. They need to obscure who is actually pulling the strings and profiting at the very end of the chain. If a known cartel boss or a sanctioned oligarch tries to wire funds, the system catches them instantly. Alarms go off everywhere.
So they are essentially, grafting a clean reputation onto dirty money.
That's a great way to put it. They use an account that looks on paper like it belongs to an ordinary law-abiding citizen, and that gives total legitimacy to transactions that would normally trigger massive red flags across the international banking network.
Man, that completely flips the risk model.
Oh.
They're using the bank's own reputation to launder the money.
Yeah.
But to get away with that level of systemic manipulation, you'd need highly credible disguises.
Very credible. It's not amateur hour.
Right. So how do they actually get their hands on this information in the first place?
Yeah.
Because my instinct is always to picture, a hacker in a dark room executing some massive Hollywood-style breach of a central database, like stealing millions of complete profiles all at once.
That happens, but the reality is much more mundane, and it's cumulative. It is basically a digital scavenger hunt.
A scavenger hunt?
Yeah. Criminals gather tiny, fragmented pieces of information across different vectors over time. So they might harvest a name and an email from a basic phishing campaign.
Okay, just the basics.
Right. Then, maybe months later, they socially engineer a telecom customer service rep to get a date of birth. And later still, they buy a leaked password from a totally unrelated data breach on the dark web.
So it's like a grim jigsaw puzzle. Because in isolation, none of those fragments have much value, do they? A leaked email address or a partial routing number, that doesn't exactly unlock a vault.
No, it doesn't. But syndicates, they operate massive data supply chains. Criminal A steals the email, criminal B steals the password, and criminal C buys both and pairs them with a public address.
Ah, I see. So when they stitch them together over time, they build this critical mass of data, enough material to confidently answer a bank's security questions.
Exactly. Or to intercept multi-factor authentication codes. And what's fascinating here is how the source material breaks down the evolution of this data once it reaches that critical mass.
Because people tend to mix up the terms, right?
They do all the time. People conflate the terminology, but operationally, the typologies are highly distinct. We really have to separate the acquisition of the data from the weaponization of it.
Let me make sure I've got this straight from the text. So the acquisition phase, that's just identity theft,
Yeah.
right? Just unlawfully gathering real personal information, sweeping up the puzzle pieces.
Spot on. That's just having the data. Then, identity fraud is the deceptive use of those pieces to actually execute an illicit action.
Okay, got it. But the escalation, where the mechanics get really crazy, is synthetic identity abuse.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just taking over someone's life, it's literally creating a new one from scratch. Criminals combine real elements, like, say, a valid social security number stolen from a child who hasn't even established a credit history yet.
Which is awful.
It is. And they combine that real number with entirely fabricated elements, like a fake name and a drop house address.
So they are stitching together a Frankenstein monster out of data, a person who does not actually exist in the real world, but the banking system thinks they do.
Exactly. But to make that fake person look real to a credit algorithm, they have to manufacture a believable history. The text mentions they nurture these profiles for months, sometimes even years.
Wait, years? Just
Yeah.
letting it sit there.
Well, actively building it up, they'll use techniques like piggybacking.
Piggybacking, what's that?
It's where they add the synthetic identity as an authorized user on a legitimate, established credit card account that belongs to a complicit third party.
Oh, wow. So suddenly this digital ghost just inherits a decade of perfect payment history out of nowhere.
Exactly. And then they leverage that artificially inflated credit score to apply for microloans or small retail credit cards. They pay them back diligently, acting exactly like a responsible consumer.
Just building the illusion.
Right, until they secure massive credit lines across multiple institutions. And then comes the bust out. They max out every single line of credit simultaneously and vanish, leaving the banks chasing a total phantom.
It's an elaborate long con.
Yeah.
But they don't just build new profiles, do they? The sources also highlight account takeover.
Yeah, that's where they gain control of an existing legitimate account that you or I already use. It completely bypasses the need to build credit because the trust is already there.
So a single criminal scheme can basically flow seamlessly through all these typologies. Starts with theft, evolves into taking over an account, and ends with them laundering illicit funds.
It's a life cycle. And this evolution from stealing scattered data to manufacturing a synthetic profile, it exposes a massive vulnerability in how institutions actually verify new customers.
Right, because having a fake ID or a stolen login is totally useless unless it can actually fool the Know Your Customer or KYC algorithms that banks use at the front door.
Exactly. And this is the incredible irony the sources hammer home. Financial institutions devote massive effort to KYC at onboarding, yet identity theft is specifically designed to exploit those exact front door controls.
It's like a bouncer at a club checking an ID, right?
Yeah.
The ID itself is 100% genuine, scans perfectly, but the person wearing the disguise isn't who they say they are.
That's a perfect analogy.
But if the bank is looking at real documents, how on earth are they supposed to know it's not the real person, especially with digital onboarding?
This raises an important question, right? Is verifying that an identity exists the same thing as verifying that the rightful individual is the one presenting it?
Definitely not.
Oh.
I mean, a bank asks for a document upload and a password. The criminal supplies the stolen, valid document and the correct password.
And the bank's automated system just checks the boxes. The algorithms give it a green light, and the institution falsely believes it is fully compliant with regulatory standards.
Well, in reality, they've just onboarded a relationship that is entirely under criminal control.
Exactly. Relying on static credentials or uncorroborated digital data leaves these firms incredibly vulnerable. The data itself is genuine, the passport scans perfectly, the holograms pass the checks. The failure is the bank's assumption that possessing the data means you own the identity.
Okay, so the criminal passed the bouncer.
Yeah.
They're inside the bank. Are they home free? My instinct says that once they pass that digital front door, they just drain the account immediately and run.
You'd think so, right? Criminals want money fast. But the sources suggest they don't do that. They actually actively cultivate an illusion of normalcy.
Because rapid, erratic movement would trigger automated alarms.
Exactly. Once the product is obtained using stolen information, the subsequent activity is carefully calibrated to look totally ordinary, because most systems are only configured to catch obvious, immediate fraud.
So they might make small, normal purchases for weeks just to season the account.
Exactly. Buying groceries, paying a phone bill.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Passing the onboarding check is just step one. Once they're inside the club, using our bouncer analogy, the criminal starts, like measuring the walls and ignoring the music.
Right. The initial ID check was fine, but the behavior is entirely wrong.
Exactly. The text makes it clear that financial crime programs have to treat identity assurance as a continuing obligation. It cannot just be a one-time check at the door.
It has to be a dynamic process. Banks must monitor for behavioral inconsistencies continuously. This involves tracking sudden, abrupt profile amendments.
Like what, changing an address?
Yeah, but drastic ones. For example, a customer opens an account in New York and then 3 days later changes the recovery email, the phone number, and the mailing address all at once.
Effectively locking out any original notifications to the real victim?
Precisely. But it also involves incredibly subtle mechanical shifts. The system isn't just looking at the IP address anymore, it is looking at device intelligence.
Wait, what does that mean in practice?
It means the system knows that the real customer usually holds their phone at a 45-degree angle, relies heavily on the backspace key, and types with 2 thumbs.
Oh, wow. It tracks the physical movement.
Yes, behavioral biometrics. So suddenly, if the device is perfectly flat on a desk, typing at 120 words per minute without a single error.
Because it's a bot or an automated script running the session.
Exactly. The system sees the mechanism of the interaction, not just the successful login. It monitors the swiping pressure, the navigation paths through the app, even the battery depletion rate.
That is wild. But it makes sense because that provides a layer of authentication that cannot be stolen in a data breach. You can't steal my swiping pressure.
Right. And if an institution doesn't maintain that dynamic, ongoing perspective, they remain exposed long after the original data was compromised.
Which leads to what the sources call zombie accounts. It appears alive and active on paper, it passes all the static checks, but it's operated entirely by a malicious actor routing illicit funds.
And the institution has to catch the discrepancy in the rhythm.
Right. If my profile says I'm a retired teacher in Ohio, but my transactional behavior suddenly mirrors an import-export business moving funds to high-risk jurisdictions in the middle of the night.
Then the static ID you showed at the door doesn't matter anymore. The behavior proves you aren't the rightful owner.
So with criminals constantly adapting, how does an institution actually fight back? I mean, building that capability requires a highly sophisticated layered defense.
It does. You cannot rely on a single point of failure. Integrating device intelligence, behavioral data, and transactional context, that all has to be paired with secure account recovery design.
Because if someone clicks, "I forgot my password," the recovery process can't just rely on a static security question.
Exactly. You can't ask for a mother's maiden name when that exact piece of data was compromised and sold on the dark web 3 years ago.
So to build this shield, institutions have to break down their internal operational silos. The response requires absolute coordination across multiple departments that, let's be honest, traditionally don't speak the same language.
That is a massive hurdle. Often the cybersecurity team handles the technical compromise of the network, right? While the anti-money laundering, or AML team, looks at the broader movement of the illicit funds.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, if a criminal uses a stolen identity to take over an account, the cyber team might view it as just a narrow authentication issue. They force a password reset, notify the customer, close the ticket, and assume the threat is neutralized.
But if they don't flag the AML division, they've missed the mule network entirely. They miss that this compromised account is now linked to 5 other beneficiaries, moving illicit funds across borders.
Exactly. The technical breach was patched, but the financial crime continues uninterrupted. The institution remains fundamentally blind to the broader network risk because the intelligence just wasn't synthesized.
They are focusing on the localized symptom rather than the systemic disease.
Perfectly said.
So what does this all mean? We've analyzed the systemic risk, the failure of static onboarding, the silos. But the sources bring this down to a really severe human toll, which we can't ignore.
No, we absolutely can't. Beyond the regulatory fines and the reputational damage for banks, the victimology of identity theft is profound.
It results in direct financial loss, ruined credit scores, denial of legitimate services. I mean, a victim might be unexpectedly denied a mortgage, rejected for an apartment lease.
Or even falsely flagged by law enforcement due to crimes committed under their name.
Which is terrifying. And the remediation burden placed on the victim is just staggering. It involves months of agonizing administrative work. Mailing notarized documents, freezing credit bureaus, spending hours on the phone.
Just trying to prove to a faceless bureaucracy that you are, in fact, yourself and not the synthetic ghost who stole your credentials. It is the agonizing process of trying to unring a bell.
It really is.
Which is why institutions must manage this as a strategic control risk at the highest governance levels. It's about tracking metrics like false positive rates, ensuring you aren't alienating your legitimate customers.
While equally prioritizing recovery times.
Right. How fast can the institution contain the misuse, and how thoughtfully can they restore the legitimate customer's financial position and trust?
Absolutely. Well, to summarize our journey through your sources today, identity theft is definitely not just a consumer inconvenience, it's the absolute foundation of modern financial crime.
Syndicates accumulate fragments of your data to manufacture legitimacy.
And they use that fake legitimacy to bypass the static, front-door checks of global banks in what is basically a supply chain attack on identity data itself. To stop it, institutions require continuous, layered, behavioral vigilance.
They have to ensure the person operating the account is actually you, moving from verifying documents at onboarding to verifying intent and behavior across the entire lifecycle.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over. Based on the source material's heavy emphasis on this ongoing behavioral validation, we've established that in our modern digital landscape, the ultimate security check is no longer what you know, like a password.
Right.
And it's no longer what you have, like a physical ID document. The ultimate security check is how you act. So consider your own daily digital footprint, the exact speed at which you type on your phone, the specific times of day you normally log into your bank.
The typical mundane transactions you make every single week.
Exactly. If your true identity is no longer defined by a plastic card, but rather by your specific digital rhythm, how hard would it be for someone else or something else to perfectly mimic the behavior of you?
It's a chilling thought.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing these fascinating sources to the table. We love digging into these deep dives with you. Keep asking the big questions and stay curious.